media, everyone's talking about the problems with Austin. Well, we want to talk about what we do to fix Austin, right? Like, what are the things that made Austin great, that made people come here, that we could see being solutions? I don't like hearing complaining and we don't actually have solutions. So I want to start off by asking everybody here, what brought you to Austin to begin with, or how did you end up in Austin? Why don't we start with Daphne?
Yes. Sorry, my thing is like in and out a little bit. Is the connection okay? Can you guys hear me?
Can now, yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry. So if you just see me just staring blankly at the screen, it's because I'm waiting for the connection to come back, and I apologize in advance, but maybe that'll be entertaining to some.
Yeah.
So I think one of the main things for me that needs to change to make Austin, sorry, guys, I was getting a call. I had everything on Do Not Disturb, and of course that didn't. Needs to happen really to make Austin as desirable as it was even 4 years ago is just the fact that we have some of the highest property taxes in the US. Texas alone has, I think it's top 5 high property taxes across the states. And Austin, of course, has been getting increasingly worse over the last, I want to say it's the last 3 or 4 years. I remember that there was some drama with the county and the Austin Board of Realtors, I want to say, it was either late 2019 or in 2020. So nobody touched our property taxes during the pandemic. And they stayed the same for almost, I think it was 2 years. And then, I guess it was in 2021 and 2020 and 2021. And during that time, our property taxes didn't change. But then in 21 and 22, home values absolutely skyrocketed, in some cases 30, 40%. And then that was the year that property taxes went up in 21 and 22. So we went from 2 years of stagnant taxes to a lot of people having their property taxes literally double from 1 year to the next. And though technically all of us are supposed to have our homestead exemption to prevent property taxes from going up, there's a lot of people that don't and a lot of people that didn't, whether they just didn't know about a homestead exemption or if they were investors. And having your property tax bill go up 40% in 1 year can be absolutely devastating. I had a client that he had just forgotten, for instance, to file his homestead exemption, and he called me and he's like, "My mortgage went up $900," and he could still put his homestead exemption on, but that's $900. That's a lot of money for like a standard family. He works, wife stayed at home, and they have 2 kids. That's money that could be used towards so many other things. And I think so many people were hit by that. And it didn't really get better until this year, if you were lucky. But still, we have some of the highest property taxes, and it can be a very, very heavy weight to carry. That's, I think, the first thing that needs to happen to make Austin.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about like ways that can be adjusted. Drew, what brought you to Austin?
Long story short, the pandemic brought me to Austin. I'm originally from Vancouver, Canada. You're going to hear it in my voice. And my husband came down here. It doesn't matter where you stand politically. We have 5 children, and we're both American as well. And we were seeing that things were open. Our kids were able to participate in sports, and those years are very important. And he asked if we wanted to move, and I said, sure. And sold our house and packed up the car with some 3 of my kids, and away we came down here, and haven't looked back.
Why Austin specifically, though, right? Like, because if it was open because of openness, that's all over Texas. That's also Florida. There are other places that are like that. So why Austin?
We like the mix of liberal, Republican political parties, the capital, the beauty that's around it. We really like that. Coming from Vancouver, that was very important to us. We didn't want to be, sorry, Dallas, we didn't want to be in a dust bowl in Dallas, all those things, but we wanted to still have some beauty. I'm on the southwest side of Austin, and that's kind of what we wanted to do. We also wanted to have educational opportunities for our children, and lots of the school districts rank fairly good here in Austin. So that was a really important thing for us as well.
Incredible.
And the real estate market was doing fairly well. So
Yeah,
obviously being a realtor, I was looking at those sort of things as well.
I've heard that. How long you been here, you said?
I've been here for 4 years. So
4 years.
Just last week was my 4-year anniversary. So.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the population's full anymore, so I don't know if this shirt actually applies. But, that's a conversation for a few minutes from now. JJ, how about yourself, man? What brought you here?
I'm originally from Central Texas, and the University of Texas at Austin was the college I went to. So that was 2000. And after graduating university, this is like in the 2000s, right? Like mid 2000s, I would still Google what was a great city. It was affordable. They kept writing about how, this is the internet. They were writing about how it was a great place for entrepreneurs. I had a real estate license. It seemed like a cool, affordable spot to stay in, and I just never left after college.
You know, I bet that's the story for a lot of people that came here pre-pandemic, right? I mean, I would imagine that. So myself, I was here, I moved here 2015, so almost 10 years ago, and I was just looking for kind of an improved quality of life from the Chicagoland area. And I saw a lot of things, the weather, the job opportunities. There was all sorts of diversity, and it was eclectic in music, in art, in adventure, and all these things. And then the weather was pretty nice too. But also, if you wanted to do a career change or shift, you could do all that. Like just everything. Everything was an advantage here versus most other places that I had been to in the United States. And I've been all over. So it was refreshing when I came to visit. I said, well, I'm going to stay here. I like this place. So I want to share, this video came a little while ago, like just right before I moved here, from the Austin, Texas government. I think it's a fun little thing to share. I'm going to share like 30 seconds of it. 30 seconds of it. Let me know if you can hear.
I get asked all the time, what about Austin makes it such a special place? Why has our economy fared so much better than many of our peer cities? What's the secret? Well, the truth is, I wish city government could claim all of the responsibility, but it's much more than that. It's a spirit of partnership and cooperation among the entire community that's at the very core of our mission to be the best managed city in America. It's an example of a place where the whole is truly greater than the sum of its parts. So, what is it about Austin? Take a look.
All right, I'm gonna stop that right there. What do you think about how the city is managed? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Like what's going on? I know, Daphne, you already said taxes could be a wonderful solution to help lowering property taxes. So how are your clients faring right now, or anybody that owns a home in Texas, in Austin specifically? How are property taxes today versus last year or the year prior? What are we looking at?
I still think they're up. The tough thing is that video was about how, what do you say, the sum of the parts and the equal unity of everything. I think it blew up really fast. The affordability off the charts, high appraisals cause these higher taxes. I think it's a shock for people, and depending on when you got in, where you got in, it could hurt. So, I think there's growing pains.
I think too, though, relatively, I hear everybody talking about affordability all the time about Austin, relative to some of our counterparts, on the West Coast, whether it's, I'm coming from Vancouver, where taxes are very high, but how the taxes are being put into place is not happening in Austin as fastly as it needs to, right? Vancouver's got one of the best transit systems. They're trying a cap metro, but the transit system here is non-existent. I do think it's very interesting that there's no charges for students and all those things. I have some teenagers, so I am aware of those. But the way it's being put to use, I think, needs to change for sure, because there's got to be a ton of money flowing into the city, and it seems like we're spending it on things that the spending needs to change. But I think affordability wise, the fact that you can still get a starter home, and I'm sure I'm going to get some backlash over this, under $600,000, you can still get into a house, because that's I started my $1 million plus was a tear down, right? So I think it's all about perspective there with affordability. And we want everybody wants their property value to go up, but they don't want to pay the property tax on the up value. And it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too either, and you can't have the services without paying the property tax. So that's an interesting double-edged sword for sure.
I actually love that dichotomy. The fact that you're from somewhere else where it was a lot different, and a lot of people, we hear these complaints, but there are so many other places in the U.S., outside of the U.S. and rest of the world that like we are still very fortunate to be here in Austin, Texas right now with a lot of things, property taxes, some of our freedoms to move around and enjoy different places. JJ, what were you going to say?
It's just interesting when you talk about pricing in Austin and the word relative comes up a lot, and then it's relative to the West Coast. So everyone else is in shock. And then, there's a group of people that are like, this is still a good deal. So it's just funny being in between all that.
Well, it's quite interesting because I've had people that look at Austin, they came from the West Coast, they come to Austin and they're like, I'd rather go back to the West Coast if I'm going to pay what I'm paying, right? So they originally came here thinking they were going to save a lot. They saved a little bit, or they bought, much larger houses or whatever. Then the property taxes were hit because the education was lacking a little bit. And then they're like, oh, no, I'm going to go back. I've got all my family there. They realized the cost of babysitting, the cost of travel. You couldn't, depending on where you are in the greater Austin area, you can't just walk everywhere, right? So all those things are a little bit different. I just listed a house this morning for $265 in Austin. Like, there are houses that are relatively inexpensive, and if you remove the word relatively, they are still houses that are inexpensive now. 2 years ago, that wasn't the case. Do I think that this would help with people moving back into Austin? Do you see that? You see that being a benefit if our housing prices come down? That's open-ended.
I think it is a benefit. I think you're going to open it up to more first-time investors. And again, I'm probably going to get some backlash for that one too. But it'll open it up for some first-time investors. It'll open it up for young families to be able to actually afford it. People won't be having to travel from, Buda, Gerald, people are getting pushed out, so they're not going to have to travel as much. So I think that'll take some congestion off the roads. I was just on 35, so I might have PTSD, so something of that nature. But definitely, I think that's it. I think affordability, if we can figure that out, whether it's home insurance prices or property tax, or at least people feeling that they're getting value for their money, right? Nobody feels like they're getting the value. That's why they're moving back to the West Coast, because they're like, well, we have all these other services and things that we can do there within our communities.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to pull up the chat. It was, we switched platforms, and last time we got a little bit of slack for not paying attention to the chat, because usually that's what we like to do. And that's a big part of it, right? We want to hear everyone's feedback. So Aaron said jobs are the reason. I'm assuming that Aaron is referring specifically to the reason that Austin is having we'll call it slump that it's in. What do y'all think?
Mm-hmm.
Slump isn't, there's more money floating around causing the prices. So I think that's jobs.
We've heard about a lot of the tech companies that are, I'll say, vacating. So Meta is a great example. Oracle moved to Nashville is a great example. And then, just like Dinosaur D said at the bottom here, the return to office. I called that 2 years ago. I said, everybody sees all these people coming in, but nobody's thinking about when you're no longer allowed to work remote, how that's going to affect traffic and affect people's decision to either go back or go somewhere else, right? Because if everything was the same and you could live anywhere in the world or anywhere in the United States, where would it be? But then if you're forced into, you got to go back to driving to work. You got to go back to, you can't have your family living with you and driving everywhere for you. And you have to do a lot of these things. It's going to change where you decide to hang your hat. Any other thoughts on these? So let's see. Heather, thank you for watching. The city is being managed terribly. Oh, it was an amazing.
She's not sugarcoating it.
I know.
I don't believe that, Heather.
It was an amazing place to grow up. So Heather grew up in Austin, and it's barely recognizable as the wonderful city it once was. But if you were to listen to the mayor or the city manager, he seems to think it was great. Now, this was 10 years ago. So the question is, for those of you that, it's kind of interesting because some of us, we didn't know what it was whenever back then was, because back then it could be a long time. But today, I know when I moved here, I liked a lot of things, and then it's still changing. So what are the things that we can do to kind of get back to that point where we all think people will continue wanting to relocate here? So let's talk about city management. Is there anything that you can see being managed poorly that we can improve upon? I think you said transportation.
Yeah, our transit is not good. It needs some improvement for sure, and the accessibility and walkability is not that great. I do love Austin, and I think there are some great points. It's a great place for a young family. There's some really great opportunity here as a business owner. Both my husband and I both run our own small businesses. It's a great, friendly, awesome city, but it just needs to get back to its core values, what those were.
Which are?
10, 30 years ago. I think we need to ask the city what those were 30 years ago. Heather might have some insight on that too, right?
Forget the city. But what were the core values that made you say, man, Austin is the place?
I think, I'm a transplant, so I can say this. I think people brought their community and what they didn't like about it and tried to implement it here. And if you start changing it into what didn't work, whether it's California or Canada or Toledo, those places, you bring it and you try to implement it here. Well, it's not those places, so it doesn't work the exact same, right? Like, I love the SkyTrain in Vancouver. Is that a feasible thing for the city of Austin? Probably not, because construction doesn't seem to move quickly. But it's not.
There's a lot of construction. There's transit. The highways they're always under construction.
Yeah, I think we need to find a plan for those and stick to the plan instead of adding on to it. I think we need to do some really good planning. I think a lot of it's reactive instead of proactive, right? I think there's a lot of reaction, and we grew really quickly. I think it's just growing pains right now.
I know I've brought this up before, but do y'all think there's any opportunity for digging under or going over, like you said, the skyline? Any of that? You think that would improve our city, our traffic at least?
Technically,
we need transportation. Yes. We need rails.
Yeah.
We need something.
Technically, would it improve it? Yeah, absolutely. Is it actually feasible? Probably not. Like, we don't have basements in Texas because we have expansive soils. So going underneath the city, I don't think is going to be realistic. I could be wrong. Going above the traffic, like doing like an air tram thing, that would be awesome. But realistically, like, that's a massive investment that I don't know that Austin's actually able to do that.
So it's interesting you say that. We don't have basements in most houses. There are a few, but in most houses. But you'll notice sky rises, a lot of these other corporate buildings, they're fine, right? It's just what they're using to construct the buildings. And steel might be much more expensive. Or, now we've got some of these Lavacrete 3D printed homes. Maybe that could be used as a some sort of foundational model for these tunnels under Austin? Again, I'm not an engineer. I don't know. I'm just saying, how cool would that be? I think that would really improve. If the traffic improved, Austin, do you think Austin would improve? I think that's a question. If the traffic improved, do you think Austin would improve?
No, not completely, because also the culture has really started to change. I don't see it as much because I got here, when did I get here? 2010, and I've kind of grown up with it. So I haven't really noticed like this massive change. But every now and then, for instance, like I've talked about this in other episodes, South Congress, it used to be so quirky and full of like cute little funny businesses that were independently owned. And now you have freaking Kendra Scott, and there's a Nike store, and like, what is that? That's Hermes, right? Like
Hermes, corporate,
and
right?
Of course, we all like luxury things now and then, great. But I feel like that's what the domain is for. That should have stayed there, and y'all should have, not y'all, but like they should have left.
I didn't do it. I promise.
I know.
I didn't bring it from Vancouver. I swear. I promise.
No. But it's like all this development and all the culture, the shift in culture is kind of demanding that, or at least it is allowing for that. And that is what is being presented. And that is who is coming, people that want that instead of people that want, like, Amy's ice cream still there. Luckily, that's been there for decades. Yeah.
Do you think it's people that want that, or the businesses anticipating based on their studies, their independent studies? Right. Because I'll use Hermes as an example. Did they say, a lot of relocations happening from this city to that city, we should place a spot here? Like, I don't know how well the store is doing. I've never looked into that. I'm curious.
I don't know.
Right? They might be empty because there's places that have opened that have closed in that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's about looking forward to, like, I hear this a lot. Austin used to be, this is how it used to be, and this is what made it so cool. And that works. That is great. But we do have a growing population. I don't know the exact numbers on how much we've grown, Ian, maybe in the last 5 years. But we do have a growing population. It's turning more from a small city into a metro, right? Yeah. So there are going to be those things. And when you get to know me, I'd like to preserve those fun, quirky places. Those are great, but it's just part of the growth. And I think we need to see how we can grow out of these growing pains and help people, see the new Austin and why the new Austin is great, because unfortunately, it's never going to be like it was in the 90s or in the early 2000s. We can't go back there, but let's see if we can integrate that into the new parts, right?
I want to talk about a few things. Obviously, the comments are a bit erratic, out of order, but I still want to touch on a lot of them. So a great example is there used to be, when I first moved here, you would see a few camps along the side of the street. This is back in 2015-ish, right?
You want to just read the comment? It's the homeless camps is what is
right. Well, I know. I was trying not to go into explicit detail, but yeah, so there were camps along the side of the street, and then it got worse and much worse. And you'd go downtown and you'd be like, oh, whoa, there's a lot of people that need help. Now you look at it. I was just down earlier today for one of my listings, and it was fine. Now, is it fine to somebody who's coming here for the first time? I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think it's improved? Do you think there's still a long way to go? And what can the city do to help this situation?
This reminds me of in the 2000s, maybe 2010s, I had a buddy straight up from New York City, like Queens, and he moved into a downtown high rise, and he thought downtown was the cleanest urban, central business district ever.
That video where the mayor or the city manager was talking, he sure enough said that. He was like, Austin's one of the cleanest cities. I was like, what? When was that? When did that happen?
Yeah, I don't think he would say that today.
He hasn't been to Singapore. There is not a drop of chewing gum on the street. Anyways.
Oh yeah, that's a whole disciplinary thing too. Yeah, I mean, are we talking solutions, or are we just kind of venting?
Yeah, the point is solutions. We all have the complaints, but what are the solutions to this situation?
That's a big one. I know that I think what people tend to look over, not that this is like I have a detailed solution, but it's definitely a mental health issue. I just could never figure out how to get ahead of it.
100% it is. And I think, we've seen the city put homeless into hotels, or try that and try the reactive approach instead of the proactive approach. And, every city has their area where you don't want to be, but they're putting a Band-Aid on the solution, right? So if you don't get to the root of the cause of the problem, it's not one of those things. And I think it is a mental health crisis that we're in. It's not employment. It's not any of those things.
One thing I heard a lot as I do research, and, you look at articles and you listen to what people say. And one thing I heard a lot is that Texas is 49th is out of 50 states that take care of their veterans. And I do know that a lot of the homeless population are veterans. And so I think that is a path to retribution and to helping this community. That's one thought I have. I don't, I'm not a statistician, but I do think that that's a big point that we've overlooked, or maybe that some have, some haven't, but it's not necessarily just people. There's also, you hear about people being brought in from other cities. You hear about that. These all become things that might contribute to what some people consider problems. And so I'm thinking, is that a solution, is to stop some of the migration? Or is that, I don't know. I don't know what the humane and also fiscally responsible thing to do would be to help Austin kind of get out of that rut and get back into a situation where we don't have a lot of people that are impoverished on the street.
It's a complicated topic.
It is a very complicated topic. And obviously that's why I wanted to talk about this, because people can complain all day, but if they don't have a solution, what are you complaining about? Right? Because some cities somewhere have tried this solution, like have tried a solution, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I will say this, I've seen a lot of stuff that is not working in other cities.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's not do what they're doing.
If I know anything else, it's like, no, let's not do what that city's doing. I'm not going to name those cities. Whoa.
Maybe like in LA, I don't know, SF.
So, okay.
Let's stay away from Seattle's model. Let's stay away from that.
I'm not even talking about that. And Seattle real estate. You want to talk about a real estate market that's booming? No, we don't want to talk about that. This is Austin. Okay, so availability of new builds. Let's touch on that for a minute. Do you think the new build situation and how aggressive the builders are was a positive thing for Austin's economy? Or for Austin in general?
In regards to more new builds or not enough new builds?
Just how it happened during the pandemic. That's a tough
question. Then it was a supply shortage.
Yeah, but it was really aggressively and poorly handled.
I like what Daphne just said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And the quality of that new build construction and the regulations that were on it is, some of that new build construction was not good. So now we have people that got these homes and they have foundation issues and they're having to fix things and they're having to do other different things. I think there was little to no regulation about how things were going up so quickly.
Yeah.
I had just come from Canada, and when I walked into a couple of really big builder houses, I won't name any names, and I was floored that was even something that was on the market.
Yeah.
So I think that's an issue too.
There were situations, and I don't want to get too graphic, but I also like being transparent. There were situations where I've walked into houses and I've seen, I'll call them grenades. That's what I call them when my dogs leave gifts in the yard unexpectedly. Grenades inside of houses being built. And then there were all these conversations about the 2x4s having the joists in the middle or having no joist in the middle to hold it together. So you have this beam, this wood beam that's supposed to go from the ceiling to the ground, except there was a separation or two, and it's actually 3 beams put together with a couple nails. You're like, oh, that's supposed to hold my home together. Cool.
Yeah.
Right. And then you hear people talking about like the quality of the nails actually diminished over time because steel was an issue during the pandemic, getting actual steel. It's pretty interesting. There were a lot of little things. And like you said, the regulations, I think there was some relaxed rules happening. And now we have a lot of builders with a lot of inventory, and they're throwing everything at people to get them to buy, while you have people that have moved somewhere and they have their homes for sale, and they have to compete with these builders that are giving us, pandemic interest rates. So you can get a 4% interest rate, 60,000 off, and they'll pay all your closing costs. And then you're looking at this other house, which is only 2 years old, but the seller can't do that, or they'd be upside down. And so how can we fix this? Give me some ideas. How can we fix this thing?
I think a lot of it just has to be time. What goes up must come down. And Austin was not particularly hit hard during the original recession in 2008, 2009. And it's like we had to get hit at some point, and this isn't a full-blown recession, okay? But it's like it just had to swing the other way. And unfortunately, I think what a lot of this will just level out with time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think educating them, right? Like educating the population about
no,
right?
You
The
people.
new home buyer that bought the new construction in a hurry, in a panic in 2021 now wants to sell their home because they heard about how it appreciated 125%. Pre-pandemic. They think that that's normal, and that's not normal. We know that those numbers are not normal. So we need to really educate sellers, and we need to educate, as an industry of realtors, we need to educate people on what normal appreciation is, and then we need to be able to price properly, because as an industry, when we start seeing price reduction, when they're like, there was a record number of price reduction, well, that doesn't mean exactly what that headline says, that we're having a market crash. Sometimes that means that we're not pricing homes properly, or we're letting sellers price their homes. So I think that's also a thing that we're getting into as well when we're competing with those new builds. It's definitely good to show, but I really think as an industry we need to do better with educating them on what their home is actually worth, not what somebody might pay for it, what it's actually worth to more than the one person, right?
I agree. And this is the realtor show, right? So we could talk on this better than homelessness. So yeah, I think, when people are buying, back then when there was really hype, I used to ask, are you going to be here for a long time or a short amount of time? Because these are low interest rates, which mean a possibility of inflation. So you got to be careful about timing. And similarly, when you have high interest rates, these are less inflated prices. So you have to understand the herd mentality, interest rates, how you're navigating that and making decisions. Because the tough thing was the person that bought at the peak and thought that they could sell a year later, and it really hurt them badly with that strategy.
Well, so to speak on that point, I think a lot of people didn't think they would have to sell. That's the real issue.
Too. Yeah, that sucks. Yeah.
Right. So most people were like, I'm going to uproot my life because I can work from anywhere. Mm-hmm. And then, the job market shifted a little bit, and they're like, no. This was temporary, right? We told you that 2 years ago, and you took advantage of the situation, rightfully so, because it was better for your family. And now we're shifting back, and you have to go back into work. And the reason why I'm so passionate about that specific thing is I didn't tell you this part. When I left a cush career, corporate career. I was making good money. I just wasn't happy in the location. And I told them that I was going to relocate. And they gave me an opportunity, because this was an extremely conservative Fortune 100 company. They go, yeah, everything's good. You can go ahead and relocate. You can keep your job. And then a week before, they said, you know what? We're doing the numbers. We're looking at everything. No, we can't do it. I was like, I already have my life sorted. Everything was already ready. I was already moving. And they said, are you going to stay? Now, I understand business a little bit better now because I was young at the time. I understand business a little bit better now. And I know that they just needed to go through some attrition and cut some losses. And this was an opportunity for them to say, you can go, but you are going to sacrifice some things. And I made the decision consciously to uproot and do that. But most people didn't have that. They were told, yeah, go ahead, do what you need to do. And then after, the term is renege. I don't know if there's a PC, is that like a non-PC term? Anyway,
I think
they
so.
reneged. most of the companies reneged, and they were like, no, we went through everything, and the pandemic's over. Y'all got to come back to work. You couldn't have expected this to be forever. And so many people, I'm sure they did expect it to be at least longer than a couple years, right? And so it really hit this market harder than a lot of others. And that is what we're experiencing right now. We have so many homes available.
Solution-wise, what do you tell that seller that says, I got to sell? I didn't know I was going to be in this mess.
Well, okay. Before I get to a solution, I want to kind of impress upon people. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom, or sometimes you have to get hit pretty hard to realize the error in your ways, right? I'm not saying that this is the right answer, but a lot of people went to new construction builders because they saw a shiny object and a good number on paper, and they didn't get any kind of professional guidance. I don't care if it is an attorney. I don't care if it is your friend that's a realtor. I don't care if it's, another person that has some kind of insight into what's going on, at least as far as quality goes, or the area that you're looking at. But there are a lot of people that are like, I just need something, calling up, I'm going to go there. And then they're spending $500,000 or more, $1 million. I think that hurt us a lot. So when it comes to education, like Drew said, and I think Daphne, you had mentioned this too, I think that could help a little bit, just having more conversations and more just open conversations like this. That's why these things exist, right? Everybody's going to make their decisions.
I would say, you need to have an exit strategy, because if things turn, can you sell it? Can you rent it out? Can you rent out per room? Can you Airbnb it? Those are exit strategies.
Do you do that with your clients? I know you do. That's why I'm asking. It's kind of a rhetorical question. But if someone's buying a house, I say, when are you moving again? Right? And you'll have so many people. You have probably, 30% say, oh, this is going to be my forever home. You're a liar. You have no idea this is not going to be your forever home. You might think this, but it's not. Your kid is, 1 year old. You're going to change. Why? Because I've seen it happen 1,000 times. Right. And I don't think people have internalized that this shift has to happen. Life goes in cycles, and there's so many unexpected things that happen that force us. Again, it goes back to my philosophy: love or money is going to make you make a change in your life, unexpected or not. Sorry, I get really worried when people make these big decisions without the deeper thought. That's all. How do you feel about foreign investors? Do you think that impacted I see your face, Daphne. Do you think that impacted Austin at all? And is there a solution to this conversation? Or do you think it'll work itself out?
I'm just going to share my...
I'm curious. George Smith, add more to that. Elaborate. I love it. Okay. So... There's so much in the comments here. Like, I'm going to say this, but I didn't write this.
Yeah, those are funny.
George Smith says, native Austinites are just blah and snarky. I'll tell you what, personally, I don't necessarily have that experience all the time. But there are so few and far between that it's like, if they are, I understand why.
Yeah, I know what he's saying.
Yeah. Well, okay, like I literally wrote this down.
Maybe
I wrote this down. I said, Lake Travis needs more water. Such a stupid comment, but it's true.
It's so true. So true.
And Barton, listen to this. And this is going to get me canceled. And Barton Creek needs more topless women that aren't doing it for attention. This is important. Here's why I say this. Austin was a place where people just got to be themselves. And it wasn't like an attention grabbing thing. And I feel like today, if you see people doing some of these things, it's not because they grew up in this culture. It's because they think, I don't know, hey, look at me. Let me put this on Instagram. I'm doing the thing at Hippie Hollow because that's the cool thing to do. It's not the same intent.
Well,
right?
generationally too, they grew up. I'm assuming I may be aging myself, but I'm assuming that generation has a relationship with perception in their digital life, something like that. You know,
y'all remember? I mean, at least you've heard about Leslie,
Yeah, we heard Leslie.
right? And everybody, that's what I'm saying. Everybody loved Leslie because Leslie was genuine, was just a genuine person. And now if somebody's doing that, you almost think, oh, they're trying too hard or they're copycats. Like, it's not the same thought, even though that was the culture. Mm-hmm. And people are poo-pooing on people like Leslie today in the same environment. I don't know. I feel like there's a disconnect identity crisis. I think that was up there before, an identity crisis. People embraced the weird and the quirky. And today it's a lot more of manicured. There are a lot of things that are manicured, just like you were saying, Daphne, about the things that are happening downtown or in South Congress. It's like, that wasn't the place. Rainey is not the same Rainey.
Yeah.
It's like the money is like this organism that moves around and multiplies in certain areas. And if we're bringing like an LA culture over, if that's happening like a Joe Rogan or, you know, you've seen what's going on. There's a little bit of the entertainment culture, which is about the show. So it's a migration cultural thing too, which is definitely not old school.
Joe Rogan will talk about this often. He left because he couldn't stand LA. He couldn't stand what it had become. Right. So that's not really an excuse.
But other people are following him from LA.
and that is that is an impact. Okay, so How can we fix this instead of just talking about it? Give me some ideas.
I think we need a better sense of community. I think we're really disjointed in our community of Austin, right? There's a lot of things going on. But there's so many options now. I feel like we have a very age different family. We have, a 4-year-old and we have one that just graduated. And I feel like there's so many options that you're not seeing everybody kind of get together in one spot or 4 spots over there. I know we're a city and there's going to be more, but together and really get behind Austin, right? Get behind Austin, not like, oh, we're here because the houses are cheaper than they are in LA. Are you here because you want to be here because you love Austin? Or are you here because the house is cheaper and you're just going to stay in your little backyard and run your family exactly the same as you did? I think we need those different types of gatherings. And I don't think we have those things. I think, they've become very corporate, like ACL used to be not as corporate. We can get into something like that, but I think there needs to be more of those things going on. Community.
I remember the allure of going to that Torchy's food truck on South Congress thinking, man, I love this place. It's cool. Right. And then the food truck park. And I think a lot of those have disappeared. And so I think adding those back and putting an emphasis on new, young, creative businesses could be a huge benefit to Austin's culture and society. Right. I was at a Torchy's on near Bull Creek, and it was this tiny little building, like a committed payday loans place. And I was like, where did this come from? This is perfect. You could probably fit 10 people in there. It was a tiny little Torchy's. And I swear the tacos were better than any of the other, big bolsterous Torchy's. It's like, and again, I'm going to get canceled, but the person that was serving me, I don't know how that person identified, but what I would have assumed is a she was definitely had a mustache. And I'm like, just a good person, given good food in a quirky little place on the corner of a street in Austin. And I was happier there being served by somebody who was just a genuinely good person than, going to the Torchy's, let's say in Mueller, right? It wasn't the same vibe. And so, I don't know. It was a unique experience.
It's like Torchy's satellite office.
Yeah, like a little one though. That's what I mean. It's not this big commercial conglomerate product. Like they've got Torchy's in Nashville or whatever, right? Like it's all over. We're hearing about Buc-ee's all over the place and all the Austin things, and it's like, I really like. I don't. Buc-ee's is in Austin, but you know what I mean. I really like the little stuff being unique, right? And there are still a lot of them, but they're kind of getting drowned out. And don't get me wrong, the world would be a different place without Walmart and Amazon. I get it. It needs to exist. But I do think that it is hurting Austin's cultural influence, which is what Austin originally was known for and why so many people continue to move here. What else do we have? Austin is being corporate America, says Dinosaur D. And history is lacking. Ooh, there could be a whole podcast on history. What's up, Daphne?
I have two things to say about this.
Please, spit them.
One, which one do I go with first? Okay, so touching on history, so I came to Austin in 2010, and there were more like historical buildings downtown and just north of downtown and around central Austin. And so many of those have been knocked down. For instance, on South Congress, again, but like just south of the Capitol, not south. There was this, what was it? Almost like a speakeasy type building. I don't know what year it was built, but it looks like it was built like in 1902. It was called Copa, and it was a Latin cuisine restaurant. And then I think Friday and Saturday nights they would move everything and then have a salsa band, and people would come and dance salsa all night long. And it was super cool, very industrial, really just very like of the earth of Austin. And then guess what? They freaking knocked it down and built the JW Marriott. And that's just one example of many, I think, buildings and like historical spots in Austin. They just knock them down. If you go to San Antonio, everything's restored historical. Not to get too far off track, but like if you go, have you guys been to the Pearl in San Antonio?
Oh yeah, I love the Pearl, the little district.
So exactly. Yeah, so that's like completely restored historical buildings. So yeah, it's like the history. We have a lot of history in Austin. For God's sake, we're the capital of Texas, and all these buildings and like structures that were there for like 100+ years just get flattened.
It's funny. It's funny you brought up San Antonio, because I remember going down to San Antonio to go see the Alamo and thinking, what happened? What is this? This is not what I signed up for. I did not travel all this way to see this tiny little box surrounded by, wax museums.
Yep.
This is the Vegas Strip, y'all. What just happened?
For like a block, yeah.
And I feel like
So what I'm getting from what Daphne's saying is preservation. Can the older Austin generation preserve, document, market the old culture? Because this new culture speaks digitally. Yes. They went to school digitally. We're out here maybe not using those marketing systems, that voice or platform as much. If I get on my social media right now, it's going to be probably more younger generation curated, because it could be like a generational tool thing, like what you're talking about. The person that looks for attention a certain way is going to get more exposure in the social media world than someone documenting like Copa. What's sad, Daphne, is I remember Copa, but I totally forgot about it until you brought it up.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Such a cool spot. It's such a cool spot.
That's scary.
There have been a lot of those, like really cool spots, like Spider House, great example. Love that spot. And all of a sudden it's just, they're like, we're shutting our doors because we can't maintain. And don't get me wrong, some of it was due to the pandemic, but even before that, I think there were people that they weren't buying into it. Yeah. I'd go into the Spider House towards its end, and there was just nobody there. I'm like, why is nobody here? This place is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a little dirty, but it was cool.
Can I kind of piggyback
Please.
off my original point a little bit too? And then we were talking about like what's going to preserve the previous culture. Obviously, we're never going to get it back 100%, but Austin used to be blatantly and proudly the live music capital of the world, and I don't think it is anymore. Like, it's hard to find live music unless you're like paying for a concert. You don't really find live music just like as you're walking through anymore. And I think if there's like an initiative where we can support artists and encourage them and provide places for them to go do that, that would help, I think, be a step in the right direction.
That is a huge solution. Absolutely. Because you are right. It is hard. Even Blues on the Green, was it Blues on the Green or the Symphony? One of those. They weren't Symphony in the Park. They stopped doing a lot of these things.
Yeah,
or announced that they weren't going to be doing it because they couldn't afford it. But that is a big part of Austin, was the music culture. And you have like Nashville, I think, is what's taken the crown in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of, if you are a bar starting today or a venue or a place that wants to have more people, pay your artists to be able to come and entertain in your space, because you have the space. And what's happening is a lot of artists can't even afford to be in central Austin anymore. Mm-hmm. And they've had to move further out to different suburbs. So either open a place out there or pay them to come in, pay for their ride share, get them to come play, and give them a little bit of cash so that they can really wow your crowd. And this, I think that will help restore a lot of the live music culture here in Austin, Texas.
There's actually nonprofits that, I'm looking some up. I forget their names, but now that we're talking about it, there's the Clifford Anton Foundation, 501c3 nonprofit in Austin, dedicated to preserving our music culture and community by caring for our elders and investing in our youth. Because sometimes these artists don't have like benefits, or maybe not getting paid enough for their gigs. So there's organizations out there. There's Society for the Preservation of Texas Music.org. There's some go-tos. I remember hearing about them. I just Googled a couple of them right now.
All right. We need to do that for an episode, is talk about some of the organizations that exist that are just benefiting Austin area or greater Austin, and can help us maybe restore the culture, come up with some solutions, just things. Because I bet there are a lot out there that people just don't know about. I'd never heard about Clifford, right? I don't know who that is. That's wonderful.
Anton. I think he has Antons. I got the Anton part.
Oh, this is good. Heather says, just because you don't know the history doesn't mean it's hacking. That right there goes back to the education that Drew and Daphne and JJ and everybody's been talking about, because there is a lot of history in Austin. Oh my gosh. If you knew some of the history in Austin, you'd probably blush.
I think we need to get Heather on to tell some of the history.
Heather doesn't want to talk about. Actually, no, the history would be good. She knew Leslie, right? Like, that's a great example. Yeah, she's got a very deep knowledge of Austin in general.
I think Heather will get on.
Oh, she'll get on one day.
We'll drag her on.
Dinosaur D says, I think Joe is more of an Austinite than a Californian. I think that a lot of people think they're more Austinites than wherever they came from until they're here.
Yeah.
And then they're like, but what about this? And what about that? Is it really 103 degrees for 90 days? Yes. Yes, it is. Wait, so it doesn't rain all the time? No, it never rains. No. And people are thrown off by that. But what else do we have in here? This is what's happening in Seattle. Foreign investors buying up properties. That is, I believe that the Texas Governor Abbott had put a hiatus on that for a short while. I don't know if that's still in play. I know it was part of a conversation. Does anybody know about this, foreign investors?
It's a conversation that's happening right now. I work with Canadian investors, so I'm going to get some hate for this too. But I do think there needs to be some...
Are you saying you're part of the problem?
I am part of the problem. Right. No, sure. I think we need to put regulations in place. I don't think we need to stop it right altogether, because Canada did put a moratorium on foreign investment for 2 years, and it really hurt. It really hurt some things, really hurt
You know-
property values in downtown sectors. It did a lot of different things. So I really think it needs to be done properly if we're going to do it, and just limit it. I think there needs to be a limit and a bandwidth that we can be in. Whereas I don't think we need to totally break it down, because I think we're going to have some people move here from there. Once that they just dip their toe in, invest, and then they buy a primary and they move down here, right? I have 4 or 5 of those that it's happening right now. And they're going to add to the culture, and, you know, hopefully they love Austin and they don't try to change it into where they're running from. But, you know, all those different things, I don't think a whole moratorium on foreign investment. I think regulation is the key there.
I think all of it is a little sticky, because you have people that are in the camp of, I don't want any oversight. Let me just do what I do. This is a capitalistic society. Let's build what we build and act how we act. And then you have the whole opposite side, which is like, no, I'd much rather pay taxes for nice schools and nice living situations and a wonderful environment. And then you've got the people in the middle that are like, well, we need some rules, but where's that line stop, right? It's always a pendulum. So it's a lot. And Austin sits kind of in the middle of all of that. Like, it goes left, right, middle. And so, like you said, if people do come here, you hope that they don't change it. But then we also agree that there needs to be things to change it, or restrictions, so that it doesn't end up doing the things we don't want it to do, or it doesn't move forward at all. It's like, what in the world? So like George said, Heather, you're right. The problem is the history is not well known. I think that would be really cool. JJ, we should look up if there's a nonprofit that focuses on the education and the history of Austin and the preservation of it. I don't know if there's any that go to, schools, or like, how many homeowners move here and know nothing about Austin? They just moved here because of the job, or like I said, love or money. They didn't know anything about Austin. They just came here and they're like, Austin seems cool. I'm one of them.
I knew very little about Austin other than, face value. And I was lucky enough to hook up with Heather, so she was able to tell me some things. But
and don't get me wrong, I learned a lot. You probably learned a lot over the years. JJ, you spent a lot more time, especially at UT, where I'm sure they're like patting your brain with tons of information about what's going on in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Daphne, did you get exposed, I guess is the question. Did you end up getting exposed to a lot of things that, like, history of Austin?
Like when?
At all, ever. Like, other than your own recent, more recent research. Like, I've looked into a lot of things during the pandemic when my thumbs were twiddling. Not really, but, I've had to research a lot of things on my own, right? Do you remember a time where things were just showing up in your face, where you had answers provided for you?
No,
or education provided?
I've also had to do a lot of research too. I mean, mostly because of my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Whether it's like we're talking about HEB and talk about the history of HEB and how that came to play, or like I did a video like a year and a half ago about like some good coffee shops or whatever. And there's this one place called Freddo's.
Oh, I love that place.
Austin, right? Like awesome. That's a whole historical.
The Victorian mansion one, right?
Yes, the haunted mansion. And there's by default, I've had to learn a lot of history and a lot of things about Austin, and there's still so much that I don't know, that I don't feel like is like super readily available.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Austin used to be called Waterloo before it was called Austin, which is why we have like Waterloo Records, and then HEB I think carries an off-brand called Waterloo.
They do.
A lot of people don't know that, or maybe don't realize that, and then we don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't remember why it changed to Austin instead of Waterloo, right? And I used to. I can't remember anymore.
Some dude.
Even if Austin dude.
Some guy did something.
Some guy did. So these are all things that affect our culture and things that affect our town, but they're not particularly obvious.
Yeah.
From in our day-to-day.
Have y'all ever taken, this is off the wall, have y'all ever taken the tunnel from the Driscoll to Clay Pit, I think it is? No. Underground tunnel?
Whoa, no.
I know. That's what I mean. Like, I've never done it either. I remember looking at videos, doing research, and I was like, there's a tunnel system?
Wow.
Yeah. I feel like one way to fix Austin And this is actually, I want everybody else to give me something. What do you have? What are your closing thoughts for ways that we can improve our culture and our society for people that are living here in Austin, greater Austin, Texas area? Drew, you want to share?
I think supporting small business, right? Because we're lacking that character, and I think really supporting small business, whether it be through a tax cut or some sort of incentive, I think that's really going to bring back your culture of people wanting to be in Austin, and going to bring back the unique quirkiness, right? Instead of giving tax cuts to Hermes. I'm not saying, I don't know if they did. I'm just saying, giving them a tax cut to come in or giving them something back. I think we should be doing that for our small business owners, and in turn they spend that money in the community. I think that's would be my number one solution.
I love it. Daphne, what do you think?
Closing thoughts?
Yeah.
One of the things that I like to see in general, and this is whether you're moving to a new place or traveling to a new place, is respect the culture that's there. And I think Americans get in trouble for this a lot when they go to other countries. They just show up and they're like, it needs to be like the US. And same thing when you move from one state to another, or one part of the world to the other. It's like, take a moment to actually analyze what's going on around you. What is the culture there? And be mindful to respect that. And I think maybe that's part of what has gotten us into some trouble. People try to twist what we have here in Austin into their expectations instead of just taking a moment to really absorb their surroundings.
Interesting. Heather just added smarter development decisions that protect our natural resources. I think that's a really, really good ad. JJ, what do you thought? What do you think? What do you thought, JJ?
My think is, I love what Daphne said. I think out of respect, out of knowledge and awareness too, just so you understand your surroundings, to learn the history of Austin, that way you'll get more respect. When you respect the culture, you get respect from the people that were here before you. And there won't be that, Hermes issue.
Hermes is going to be angry with us after this episode.
Yeah, right. They're going to sponsor our next one. They're going to be like, come tour our different showroom floors. We'll give you a scarf for $1,000. Worth it.
I know we are not getting the invitation to buy a bag today. That's
Hermes,
for sure.
If you need sponsors, we're here for you. It's fine. Not afraid. You got to prove it to us, though. You got to prove it that it's worth it. This is good. I think this is a good conversation. If I were to share anything, I really like a lot of what we talked about. I think the history is one of those things that is highly overlooked. One thing that I think most people don't do is they're never or rarely a tourist in their own city. And I think that could help a lot with the education and understanding the culture. You don't know the culture if you haven't experienced it yourself. If you're just sitting in the house on the computer all the time, you're not living in the place, right? You're not among the people of the place. And I do that as much as I can. I go to a different coffee shop, local or wherever, and try to bounce to different places. So I'm learning more and more and more. But be a tourist, spend a weekend with your family and try to be a tourist in your own city and see if that improves how you feel about the city or it declines a little bit. And if it declines, listen, I know somebody who can help you sell your house. I'm just kidding. There's a lot of potential for Austin to return to the place that people heard about 10 years ago and they just can't wait to be part of that, whatever that is. And it's going to progress over time, but it's also a wonderful thought knowing that while it's progressing, we still value small business. We still have a wonderful art and music culture, and we have people that are kind and will pull over on the side of the road and say, come on past, because I was riding their butt. And then I'm apologizing as I'm passing them. Thank you. Right. And thanking them for letting me go past. There was only one road and Austin had bad, city planning. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for being part of this. And we will see you in the next Real Estate Lab podcast. I love it.
Thanks, y'all.